When we talk about continuous improvement as well, it's important to review and update FMEA documents on a regular basis. And that might sound easier to do in theory than in practice, but in practice, there are several opportunities that we have that we can update our FMEA documents. For example, when we make a change to the product or process, at that point, we have to update our control plans anyways. We might as well take out the FMEA and update it as well. Or perhaps we're, updating a different product or a different process, but it might be a good time then to say, well, what other products or processes might this change affect? What else could we maybe introduce this new control that we've discovered or are implementing? What other process or products would benefit from that, and then update those FMEAs at that time as well. Or at regular meetings, say if you have a weekly meeting or a monthly meeting where you go through each of your products, at that time, just throw out the question, is there anything that we need to add or change to our FMEA document? By doing little bits at a time like that, not only are you ensuring that your documents are most up to date, but it's really, a very small endeavor to do. It takes only a few minutes to update, one document if you're introducing one or two changes, as opposed to, if you wait for all of these changes to take place and then you go back in a year from now, 2 years from now, and say, right, well, what do we do? Again, then you have to go through the brainstorming process, and things might be overlooked and that. So if you can do it on a regular basis, it's the best, not only from a time saving point of view, but also from ensuring that we don't repeat the same mistakes. Also, for continuous improvement, it's important to identify and track key metrics over time. If you can graph these metrics as well, that'll help highlight areas that you need improvement. So, for example, if you're tracking key metrics such as the highest RPN for a particular document, or maybe the average RPN for a particular document, and if you track that over time or over maybe the different revisions that you have for a document, you should be able to see a trend, and hopefully the trend is as in this graph that's on the screen at the moment, where the metrics, each of those numbers are trending down. If you do have a spike in a particular number, that's a good indication that we need to see what that is and assign actions maybe to reduce the risk associated for a particular failure mode. A spike might occur, for example, if we do have product line failures or customer returns that increase our occurrence levels for a particular cause, for example. Well, we'll want to take measures to reduce those, and by tracking this over time, that might be more apparent to us that that the situation has changed. The other thing that we can do is use Pareto graphs. And Pareto graphs essentially would be a bar graph that highlights the top, for example, RPN value for each of these documents, and maybe we select, each month or each quarter, select the top three, um, from that Pareto graph and assign actions to those, and then review those and ensure that those actions are actually being followed through so that we can actually bring down the risk. Maybe, the action will be to introduce a new control or to, um, determine ways to reduce the occurrence, maybe by a design change or something like that. And by reviewing these actions over time, we're able to actually ensure that these metrics are being reduced and that we're having continuous improvements. Um, Action follow-up. So, the FMEAs, for example, have that right-hand side of the FMEA, which is all recommended actions and fields associated with those recommended actions. Who's responsible for those actions, what actions did we actually take, and then we reevaluate the severity, occurrence, and detection based on the actions that we've taken. It's a great idea to review those open actions at weekly meetings, for example. So if we have a weekly meeting where we go through, down the list of all of our products, um, if we just take a moment and just review the status of each open action in terms of their target completion date and the current date, and see if there's areas that we can improve or maybe reassign or reallocate some resources for meeting those target timeframes. Um, in a team environment as well, that'll help promote an open discussion. So it might be a case that by reviewing these actions every week, the team might be able to contribute additional information that might help the action owner, complete that task, or maybe they'll highlight different ideas for ways of reducing the potential cause in the first place, and maybe that action then can be replaced with a different action. So it's a good idea to have that in a team environment. If an action is complex or maybe is time consuming, maybe it's something that isn't going to, the action isn't going to be complete by the next meeting that's being held. If you set interim targets or milestones, that might make more complex projects more manageable. It also will give the team an idea of, how that action is progressing. And again, there might be opportunities there for team suggestions on ways to improve that action. There are other post-study challenges as well, and some of those, even once we've completed the FMEA, there are challenges with that, and some of those include, for example, revision control or version control. How do we ensure that the document that we're working on is the most recent? For example, if we want to just introduce, one change, and maybe we're adding that new control or whatever, or adding an action to the FMEA. How do we ensure that we're actually using the latest FMEA? And that can be a challenge, especially if you're using spreadsheet software for that, because that means that you need a third-party system to manage that, or maybe you're relying on the name of the document, indicating which revision it's at. And then you're relying then on a human to go in and identify the most recent one based on that, and mistakes happen. The other thing too with mistakes is document access control. It could be a case that if you have, for example, a SharePoint site or a centralized location for each of these documents, one engineer might accidentally go in and change data for another engineer's product or process, if they're similar products or similar processes, for example. And of course, there's implications with that that aren't constructive. So, you know, being able to manage access control for who's able to actually read or write to these documents is important. Also, identifying related documents. So today's discussion was primarily on FMEA, but the FMEA, for example, if you have a process FMEA, well, that process FMEA corresponds to a control plan and a process flow, and managing the relationships between those documents is important. And if we have those, say, in a spreadsheet format, it could be difficult to ensure that all of our process steps that we've identified in the process flow have been, addressed in each of our control plans and process FMEAs. And also reporting, if we have, hundreds of FMEAs or several FMEAs even, if they're all in independent documents, then it's a very manual process to go in and report and to extract the information that's important to us. So those can be challenges when we are